So today we are, as Reverend Jackie mentioned, talking about enlightened citizenry. This is a phrase that I just out and out stole from Dr. Roger Teal. He would talk about this a lot during his ministry here. And I just thought it was such a powerful, powerful concept that I've spent a lot of time wondering, what does it really mean to be an enlightened citizen? And I've heard some rumors that there's something going on Tuesday here in the U.S. that maybe we should give some thought to being a little more of an enlightened citizen for. And not only for what we're about to do in terms of voting, and many of us have already voted, but if you're going to go stand in line and vote, or we're going to watch the outcome of that in the weeks and days and years ahead, it seems like it would behoove us to become an enlightened citizen, not only for the sake of our United States of America, but for the sake of the entire world. So to start out the conversation, I began exploring a little bit about the word enlightened. What does enlightened mean? I'd known it mostly through spiritual circles. There's also an element of the word enlightened that's defined by being modernized or the latest and greatest, meaning it's the enlightened version of our staff policies and that sort of thing. But in our world, in this spiritual realm, and in the realm we're talking around, our own consciousness and our awareness of our world, I believe that enlightenment is all about spiritual awakening. It's about bringing light, literally the word light in the middle of that, light to the way we show up on this planet as a citizen, the things we say and do in our own minds, in our own beingness, as well as what we say to other people and how we behave towards other people. And enlightened citizenry is about bringing our spiritual values and mores to bear upon our activities as a citizen on planet Earth. And it's an important choice because an unenlightened citizenry creates darkness and more violence and more of what I think we don't want. And so I do believe that part of how we can be a healing presence on this planet is to ask ourselves and to consider, how am I being an enlightened citizen right now? And how am I not? And so it's important for us to consider this. And I started out this exploration for this particular talk a number of weeks ago with our wonderful videographer, Bobby, whom you saw in the announcements, asking people out on the plaza. I call it my person on the plaza interviews. What do people here think it means to be an enlightened citizen? So we have a brief video to show you about their answers. Let's start with them. What does it mean to be an enlightened citizen?
To me, it's to think as a universal citizen. So not just your own personal desires, but what's for the good of the all. And that means animal, vegetable, mineral kingdom, the entire planet, everyone, everywhere. Of course, we all have our own wishes and wants, but to really try to choose what is best for all, for the highest good of all, and then to follow that, and to not get entangled in right and wrong, and to try to be a peaceful citizen when you make your choices.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Putting yourself in the shoes of other people and realizing that it's okay to have differences and that we embrace our differences.
What does it mean to you to be an enlightened citizen?
I think to me it means to be open, to be looking at all viewpoints and hearing what everybody has to say, because maybe they're going to teach me something I didn't know and it might alter my view.
I believe an enlightened citizen is one who's able to consider the needs and interests of others that they're living in society with.
An enlightened citizen is being happy, being kind, helping other people.
I think it means to know who you are and your truth, and to just come from that point in how you live.
I think an enlightened citizen is probably a good person that has a bright soul and loves things.
For the equity and inclusion of our society and the fairness to all. Well, for me, being an enlightened citizen is leading with compassion and holding a higher vision than current events and circumstances, and working toward that vision with compassion and goodwill.
A person who looks not only outward but inward.
Well, I believe that we all stand for humanity. And within that, we have to move for the most benevolent outcome for all people.
An enlightened citizen would be a citizen that looks toward the light.
You be responsible, you have empathy, you...
Tell me what it means to you to be an enlightened citizen.
I think an enlightened citizen is someone who is curious about other people and about the whys and hows of things, and also someone who is compassionate and wanting to lean into understanding.
Basically, that means to shine my light.
Enlightened citizens. To me, it means really paying attention to what other people are going through, not reacting to what they say to me, but really feeling into what they're experiencing and trying to relate to them that way.
Beautiful. Thank you.
That was easy.
Wonderful job. Such wisdom here, huh? And we had a lot more interviews than that. We could have, that's my talk. I'm done now. Let's take the offering. No, I'm just kidding. We could have really, people were very wise and articulate. And honestly, in all of the ones that we included and the ones that we didn't include, I would say the number one word that was spoken when it came to what it means is compassion. Compassion and love. And I also think it was a lot about paying attention to other people, listening, being respectful, being kind, a lot of those kind of words. So what does it take to do that? How can we do that? How can each one of us embody more of that? And I believe that in order to do that, each one of us has something we likely need to change about the way we think or the way we approach the world at large. And change is a powerful word. It was beautifully expressed in the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's quote that Reverend Jackie read, that change, we have to be prepared for change. And then you take change, and I think if you go further, maybe a little bit more profound word that we might consider than, well, I've got to change is I've got to transform. We've got to transform our systems, and we've got to transform the way we approach things, and we've got to transform this. That's a powerful word too. Transformation is a powerful, powerful word. And then as I was contemplating this, it felt to me like a little bit of a higher vibrational energy beyond changing and transforming was transmutation, transmuting. Now, I played with that word, transmute, and transmutation is often most associated with alchemy. With what alchemists were trying to do is they were wanting to change metal to gold, to transform something from one substance to another substance, to really, in the life of spiritual seekers, transmutation is about going from our lower nature, which might include selfishness and ruthlessness and egotism and only looking out for me, and transmuting my energy to, as some of our folks said in the video, maintaining my preferences and acting on those preferences, yet having profound compassion and extending great freedom and respect to all citizens everywhere, to all beings everywhere, no matter what's going on for them. That word is often used by not only alchemists, but mystics and spiritual greats who are seeking to teach humanity how to live from a higher place, to transmute ourselves. And love was also mentioned in our video. Most alchemists, or people who are practicing spiritual alchemy, believe that love and compassion is the highest state of the transmutation energy. That we can no matter what someone is doing, how they're behaving, we can still, if we choose to, extend ourselves to them in love and compassion. We may not agree with them, and that's fine. We may not even like them personally, and that's fine. But we can extend ourselves in absolute love and transmute ourselves and the whole atmosphere of our planet by doing that. This is what we talk about and teach about here in our community, and it is the most important, profound, and challenging practice of being a spiritual person, of being a human being, of being a citizen on this planet Earth. And yet I think we're all being called to it. And how we know we're being called to it is that we can see the things going on in the world, not only in our country, but around the world, that are challenging. And we wonder what to do. And we wonder if this is enough. But this is the work. This alchemy is the work. This transmutation is the work. Because what I know for sure is that if we continue to be focused on what we don't want, and some of us are very passionate about what we don't want, aren't we? That passion is very creative. One of the basic teachings here in our community is if we focus on what we don't want, we just get more of the same. And part of the reason that's true is because many times we are much more animated, passionate, and energized about what we don't want than what we do want. This invites us to put as much passion through the activity of transmutation into what we do want, and to move ourselves and facilitate ourselves forward in that energy. And so I want to focus on two areas of transmutation this morning. The first one is transmuting confusion to clarity. Part of what is challenging for us, whether we're in an election cycle or we're watching the news happen, is that there can be great confusion and we can feel confounded by what we're seeing and hearing. And so clarity, transmuting that confusion, is a huge part of the spiritual practice of becoming an enlightened citizen. I know that I have felt in this election cycle so confused at times, and I watch morning news on some weekdays just to get a sense of what's going on in the world, and I've watched the commercials, and there'll be a commercial that says, this candidate is a saint because they've done all this stuff, and then right after that, in the next 30 seconds, a commercial, this candidate is a horrible, evil doer, and you should never vote for them. What's true? How do I know what's true? Do I know what's true by watching television? No. But a lot of that marketing machine, not only about the election cycle, but about the world at large, is about activating our lizard brain, making us afraid, to be afraid of that candidate. They did this, and I heard it on television, or I saw it on social media. Oh my gosh, can you believe that? And all the while, there may be clarity about none of that's even true. But we're being supported always, if we pay too much attention, to being confused and afraid and led into a state of being. I feel like I've fallen into holes sometimes when I go on to social media. I'll fall into some hole of someone's comment and then looking at the comments, and I'm in this hole, and before I know it, it's a dark hole and it is horrible, and I just want out. I felt like it's a horrible tennis match that I've been watching for a year and a half. Boop, 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 boop. And on both sides, if you will, here in the U.S., at times, boop, boop, what are they doing over there? It's crazy. It can be crazy making. How do I transmute that confusion that I might feel into clarity that's in alignment with my values, in alignment with my preferences? I can't stay in confusion and have that experience. I've got to facilitate myself out of it. I remembered a piece that we used to have in one of our classes years ago that I suspect many of you have probably heard before, but I want to presence us to it because this feels kind of the process for me of facilitating myself out of confusion into clarity, that transmutation process. It's called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Anybody else relate to that? I've done that before. Yeah. Chapter 2. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. These 2 chapters to me represent a lack of clarity about my responsibility in my own life, about my energy, my accountability for how I show up in the world. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. It is my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. There's where it starts to click. There's where something new begins to happen. Oh, I've taken myself down this rabbit hole. It's my fault. I can get out. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. To transmute ourselves from confusion to clarity means we have to walk down different streets. You could equate that to walk down different synapses of our brain to take ourselves and facilitate ourselves down different ways. To say to ourselves, I choose to be an enlightened citizen. I choose to be a contribution of good on this planet. And that means I got to walk down different streets. I can no longer choose to walk down the streets where I spend a lot of time in upset and making people wrong and criticism. And spiritual clarity, which I transmute myself to, still comes with it my preferences, my choices, my way of voting, my preferences for there to be more peace on the planet, my preferences for certain policies and people. It's not like we just get rid of that stuff. That's important, but how I express those preferences is with great peace, not such anger and frustration. Years ago, we had a wonderful teacher named Ken Kais come to Mile High Church, and I thought he was so transformational. He's no longer on the planet. He made his transition, but he brought to us beautiful work about understanding that when we're walking through this life, an enlightened person absolutely has their preferences, but they don't feel a need to project their preferences onto another person. He would say, happiness happens when your consciousness is not dominated by addictions and demands, and you experience life as a parade of preferences. It's the willingness to have my preferences. See, sometimes I think we spiritual people, I've said this before and I will say it again, we fall into the trap of believing that oneness means that everybody has to have the same preferences. And that simply is not true. Oneness is not sameness. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, would say this. Spiritual teachers throughout the ages have said this. It's easy for me to hang out and be only with people that I agree with and that I feel one with. Advanced spiritual studies is to hang out with people I disagree with and love them and have compassion and respect for them. Spiritual advanced studies is even, here we go, take a deep breath with me, the candidate that you hope doesn't win next week, to send them love and compassion. Have I got you still here with me? That's advanced spirituality. It's to not wish harm for anyone. It's to not wish a lack of good for anyone, no matter what they've done. But to stand in that spiritual depth of trust and love and clarity about my own values and my own life, and to exercise that with great love and to walk forward in that while holding all beings in love and compassion. That's true spiritual clarity to me. And hand in hand with that comes the second transmutation that I think is the most important. It's transmuting fear into faith. Fear into faith. Fear argues is that if we don't want what happens to happen, the world's going to fall apart. If the thing that happens that we don't want to have happen happens, we're all dead. The world is going to end. Our freedoms are going to end. People are going to die. And I understand that with this world structure happening, the stakes are high and there's challenges before us and great challenges ahead of us. And transmuting ourselves to a faith way of living, though, says we can survive and thrive no matter what. And indeed, faith actually can have some place where it can look back and say, hey, as a country, as a world, it's not like we've never been through crisis before, is it? It's not like bad things haven't happened before. We've had global wars, we've had terrorism, we've had challenges with pandemics, we've had times where different countries were at odds with each other and we've been at odds. We have been through lots. And while it hasn't always been easy or pretty or beautiful, it is all a part of the evolutionary journey of humanity, and faith lands squarely in that pocket and says, I may not understand, and yet I choose to continue to be a being of faith and do my part to keep people in that space of love and compassion. I don't allow my fears to take over and have me be a contribution constantly of fear and anxiety. Rather, I choose to do my practice and to be centered and to trust the journey that I'm on and that we're on together, that I stand for faith and love and compassion, not only in my head, but how I live it out. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, in his final message called Sermon by the Sea at our Asilomar conference in 1959 said these words: "It would be wonderful indeed if a group of persons should arrive on earth who were for something and against nothing. This would be the summum bonum of human organization, wouldn't it? It is in the life of the individual." Now, I've been quoting that quote for years, and I never looked up summum bonum before now. I totally admit it. This time I was like, what the hell is summum bonum? It means the highest good, especially the ultimate goal according to which values and priorities are established in an ethical system. And the key thing that he stands for, as have spiritual leaders, Jesus included, as he was facing the civil unrest he was in, it was all about being for something and against nothing. It was all about being for love and not hate. It was all about the great Dr. Martin Luther King being for peace and nonviolence, not hate and retribution. It has always been, by the greatest voices, calling us to our higher place of profound faith. And this is one of those times. This is one of those moments where we're being called together, not only about our own election, but about everything that's going on on our globe, to be and embody this enlightened citizenry. So I think we do that by transmuting our confusion to clarity, by transmuting our fear into a deeper faith. And a few years ago, I found a practice that I have talked about here before that I want to talk about today that really spoke to me and has made a huge difference. I was going through a period in the last 4 years where there was a lot of death and destruction in my personal life and my family's personal life. It was a very challenging time. And I found myself gravitating towards a book called When Things Fall Apart by the great Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. I think I carried that book with me almost everywhere I went for a while, and I would just take it out and read it when everything got a little overwhelming for me. And there are a lot of sects of Buddhism that talk about the way to enlightenment and to transcend suffering and that sort of thing. And Pema Chodron in this book talks about the notion of being a bodhisattva in the Buddhist teachings. She talks about how many humans, in our attempt to feel better, will try to push away our suffering or push away the collective suffering so that instead we can grab hold of love and peace and somehow pack it into our beingness. She talks, though, about a bodhisattva does the opposite. And many of the Buddhist sects believed that Jesus was a bodhisattva and that Gandhi was a bodhisattva, that these are beings that word is defined as someone who spends a majority of their time seeking to be a beneficial presence to humanity in their actions and in their internal life. That sounds to me a lot like being an enlightened citizen. How can I be a beneficial presence? So becoming a bodhisattva, she says, and this was really profound for me, is that instead you take your highfalutin consciousness and you go down the mountain into the suffering. And you don't have faith in God. This is not about saying, God will handle it all. God will make sure the right person is the next president. God will make sure Putin gets his. It's not about that. It's about having the faith of God. It's about recognizing that it's not like there's some God out there that's going to fix all this stuff for us. It's that we are the fixers. We are the enlightened citizens who have the ability, because the God presence, the transformative life presence that is expressing itself, as Lisa said in the beginning of that video, through all beings and all things and all plants and all animals and all humans and all expressions of life, is right where we are. And we are not some lost, disempowered beings who can't make a difference. Rather, we are beings who can stand in the midst of whatever's happening, take it into our being, and transform it into love. And so we actually enter into the suffering. One of the practices she teaches in this book that we've practiced here before is called Tonglen. It's the practice of literally just being with that which is challenging and breathing it in, taking in that suffering, that pain, that anxiety, and feeling and choosing to transmute it with the energy of the divine as us, and breathing it back out into the world. It's a practice that, for me, helps me be an enlightened citizen. To look at something going on in the world, and instead of saying, they got to fix that over there, or who's going to take care of that, or we need to vote that out, or we can't hand that. Oh boy, that must be really tough. I don't disengage from it. I engage in it. The suffering, the pain, the loss, the sadness. And I breathe it in, and I transmute it, and then I breathe it back. This is the Buddhist practice of Tonglen. And I'm suggesting that we practice this together today and over the next week as we face whatever it is we face together, as a way of transmuting our fear, if we have any, or our anxiety into greater faith. So right now I'm going to ask our practitioner prayer partners to stand with me in this practice as they normally do. And we're going to do a couple rounds of Tonglen. And then I'll do a normal prayer that we're all used to. And after our service, I remind us that all of us can come forward and receive prayer from a practitioner today after the service if you'd like it and need it. And right now, I invite us just to go within and begin to breathe and become centered. To feel all of these words and these ideas and thoughts that are floating in this space that we've experienced together, and feel the impact of them and opportunity to open our hearts. No one is forcing us to practice Tonglen, so if you want to say, nope, that's not for me, you are totally at choice. For those who are choosing to join us in this practice, we take a moment right here and right now to begin right where we are. And so we feel into this beautiful space of beings in this room, those watching us online. And we may not know what suffering someone's going through, what brokenheartedness may be in someone's life who's in this room right now, what challenges. But what we can know is that wherever human beings gather together, someone is struggling with something. And so we breathe that in, the breath of any suffering of this space, of anyone in this place right now. We just breathe that into our being, and we feel that light presence within us begin to immediately transmute it. We even see a light within us. We even imagine that God presence within us, that transformative energy that is moving upon that fear or that suffering or that pain or that sadness, and transmuting it to love and light and compassion and peace. And we breathe it back out into this room, through that camera, to those watching wherever they are in the world. This is how we begin the practice. And I invite us now to practice Tonglen on any place in the world. Maybe we imagine those who are working in the polls, the pollsters, the political workers in the next week, or the polls themselves, those who are voting, or maybe we imagine another home where we know there's struggle or challenge or violence, or a country where we're concerned about the people, and we breathe in that energy, and we feel that light within us with its great capability to transform that energy. And we feel the transformation occur, and the compassion and the love and the peace, the solutions that we may not know of, and yet we stand in them, divine solutions to challenges. And we breathe that back out to that same place, that home, that heart. Oh, what if we simply underestimate the power we have to transform our world, each one of us. This God presence so alive, so profoundly alive in us, calling us to utilize it on behalf of ourselves and all of the beloveds we share this beautiful planet with. So I accept and affirm in this prayerful consciousness that we go forth empowered, enlightened, in joy and awareness of our ability to stand in our own light and clarity, to stand in our faith in the days ahead, to stand in the deepest truth of oneness and connection as we look upon, contemplate, and interact with every beautiful thing on this planet in these days ahead. We are enlightened citizens. I claim this, I accept this. And the energy from this moves out onto this planet and surrounds it in love and light. For this is not only for our good that we do this work, this is for the good of all. And we give thanks for our ability to do this, as we release this prayer into the action of that universal law, that beautiful alchemy of prayerfulness that transforms these words into manifested reality. Transmutation. We let it go, we let it be, and so it is. Amen.